Welcome back to 83 Till Infinity. This is Disco Trek, our Star Trek Discovery podcast, videocast, predictions, review, opinions show. I'm Bert.
I'm Alex.
I'm Jesse.
All right, so this week we're talking episode 3, People of Earth, which I feel like there could have been more People of Earth in the episode, in my opinion, but we'll get to that. Plot predictions wise, there weren't really many reveals, I guess. There was some talk about, Trills and symbionts being around, and that's obviously the case now. So congrats to everybody who caught that or saw that coming. But I really don't think that the macro plot moved along that far from the previous episode. Like, we already knew that the Federation was a shell. I guess now we know that they're not headquartered on Earth anymore, which, sure, whatever. I don't think that's a really big plot point, or maybe it will be somehow. What did you guys think of the episode in general? What would you give it on a 0 to 10 scale? We'll go with Alex first.
Sure. As the eternal optimist, I will give it a 7. I feel like your general thought is exactly how I felt. I felt very much like there wasn't a lot of meta progress. The going back to Earth, the world building that I was sort of asking for last week, it sort of didn't happen. They went to Earth and still didn't really build out the world very much. There's raiders everywhere, and dilithium is in some amount of scarcity, which is still, I'm a little bit confused about how scarce it is.
Yeah.
But going back to Earth, I think was hard as a Trekkie, like going back to Earth and it not being there. But I think my general thought is that it was a 7, and it did give me the one question, which I think was the point of the episode, which is, what is the Federation? Like, is it a grouping of thousands of ships that's centered on Earth, or is it something else?
Mm-hmm. Jesse?
I don't know. I think at this point I find Discovery, because it's serialized instead of episodic. Even though other Trek series have, some serialized content, I think it's always hard to gauge the overall merits of an individual episode when you're not clear how it fits into everything. Like, I think when I went back and watched previous seasons of Discovery, I felt like individual episodes, it didn't feel as strong as they did when I watched them the first time. Felt a little better when they were placed in context with the rest of the story. Yeah. I want to like the show, and I still just like, I struggle to get through the episode. I'm not interested in it. I'm not interested in what's happening. They just, like, to me, this is a fascinating premise. You're 900 years in the future, and they just keep refusing to make it interesting for us, right? And I like, there's a lot of people out here who hate this show because there's people of color and women in charge, and I'm not those people, right? Like, I love the Michael Burnham character, I love the crew. I think they've got a good cast, minus Tilly. And now the Wesley Crusher character they got from the Earth Defense Squad. I'm a 16-year-old genius, and I sabotage things to prove a point.
Yeah.
Don't like. And I even kind of walked back my opinions on how much emotion the show has, because I was like, I was trying to be a little bit to look at it holistically, right? This is supposed to be futurism.
Yeah.
That's the inherently the nature of Trek. And I was trying to at least think, well, you know what? I don't think that much emotion on shows is appropriate, but maybe that's colored by my professional background and by the way I interact with colleagues at work and by my 21st century thinking. Maybe in the future it's okay to scream at work and swear and tell your boss that science rocks.
Yeah.
I guess, I'll go along with that. Having said that, I'd give this episode a 4.
4.
I'm just not, and not because it was bad. I just not interested. The only thing I did like, and I made the note, is that I do like that there was sort of like a classic Trek storyline in one part of this episode, and that you have sort of classic Federation MO, which is finding sort of like two warring factions who don't understand each other and, you know, helping them to reconcile their differences. And that is maybe, okay, you know what, maybe 6 out of 10.
Nice.
Now that I'm rethinking that,
Wow.
maybe it's a 6 out of 10, because that is, to me, that's what Star Trek, that's one of the things that Star Trek was always good at is, but I mean, the problem is that usually they would find two warring factions that were at odds with each other for the wrong reasons, or for something that relates to our situation on Earth. Here, it's just, I guess you could, because it's resource hoarding.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is applicable to our day and age, right? Like you could look at that as wealth or as fuel or as anything, right? Like it's one group hoarding more resources than they need while other people, you know, go without. So maybe this was a good Trek episode.
Wow.
I'll give it a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Okay. I'm going to give it a 6, but I also sort of give it, I don't know, I guess an 8 and a 4. So the first, 6 minutes and the last 7 minutes of the episode, I give a 4. Because the entirety of the first 6 minutes and the last 7 or so minutes, so around 13, 14 minutes of the episode, are just gangs all back together. Everybody's okay. Don't you love these characters? And, aren't you so happy that the gang's all sort of here? And it's episode 3. Like, I understand you wanted to split them up for episode 1 and episode 2, but at the end of episode 2, we got the, okay, everybody's all right. Maybe you spend 3 or 4 minutes of the episode on that and then leave it there. The part that really made it annoying to me, though, was that the middle part of the episode, I wanted more. That is sort of the part of the episode that is very much TNG. Let's, who's the real bad guy? They land on a planet and, they're going to sign this treaty so that whichever species that lives on this planet can join the Federation. But then there's a transporter accident and Deanna Troi finds herself in some sort of grotto with some rebels on the planet, and it turns out that they enslaved this secondary race on the planet, and she really knows what's going on, and turns out that the terrorist faction is actually a bunch of freedom fighters. And at the end she confronts Picard and says, "Captain, don't let them harm these people, you don't know what's really going on." Like, it's one of those types of who's the real evil episodes, which is interesting. And there was so much to those characters, to the captain of the Earth Defense Force sort of team that beams aboard their ship while the shields are up, which is interesting.
Don't you feel though, like if you want people to empathize with you, don't wear a terrifying alien mask.
Yeah.
While you're communicating with them.
Yeah.
You look like a giant insect that wants to eat human flesh.
Well,
don't do it.
That's a very fair point, but why was he wearing the mask? Like, was it for
I don't know.
as a rebreather? Like, it was a cool ass mask.
Yeah.
But why? What was the actual practical reason? Was he pretending not to be human, or is he trying to scare them?
Yeah,
I
don't
really
know.
didn't get the point of the mask.
And
Other
I mean,
than
'Cause
last
it's Halloween,
week,
and unlike Bert, he decided to wear a costume.
I mean, last week I think all three of us predicted that he would be clearly a normal person underneath a mask, and I mean, it's because the mask, it's just so obvious.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Jesse. I don't really understand the mask.
And again, that's the type of thing that if you have, 6 more minutes to play with to fill out that plot, you can explore. Maybe it's because, they're from, where were they from? Were they from Titan? Europa?
Titan. Yeah.
They're from Titan. And maybe out on Titan, gravity's different. They've been there for some generations. The people, you have a sort of the Expanse sort of situation where, they've elongated and they can't deal with G-forces as well. So they got to wear these crazy masks to be able to deal with, 1G of force. Like, that would have been interesting. They've been isolated from Earth for so long that they've actually sort of started to diverge. Would have been interesting if they had more time to explore those things. The other thing that sort of was crazy to me is that you name the episode People of Earth and you go to Earth and the only people on Earth are characters from the Discovery. They don't encounter a single future human on that planet while they're down there. It's just them.
No, just a tree.
There
Which
aren't
is,
even people
to be
in the
fair,
background.
They're not interested in picking up tech or kind of making Discovery better, being like, how can we clearly have an inferior spacecraft that aside from its ability to travel, without dilithium is a pretty worthless. It's worthless. It doesn't have any good weapons or anything, right? Like it's clear they're outgunned everywhere, and you just think like maybe like clearly they're friendly with you now after you've resolved this problem. Maybe you could stop and get some technology from them. Maybe they might want to help you.
The security officer, every time they encounter a ship, they've got some kind of advanced phaser. And it's like, oh, they've got some kind of advanced shield. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's just been 1,000 years.
Yeah, maybe you can just pick these up at, Walmart. If you just bother to go and see what's around, ask somebody for
phasers.
Yeah, you could literally go down to Earth and say, hey, what kind of discount can you give me on, 100-year-old tech? And they'd be like, oh, take it for free. We don't want that crap. That's 800 years better than what you're using.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and I just feel like this is where I think the showrunners and the people who did design and world building for the show didn't do a very good job of imagining, like aside from imagining like sort of the political situation, which I think is fine, right? This idea that the Federation has crumbled and Earth has kind of retreated into itself and everyone's kind of just sort of trying to get by after the burn. I feel like they didn't do a lot of good. They didn't really do the work to kind of like properly flesh out how the future universe was going to look and what changes might have really happened aside from the political ones, right? Like Bert's point about language, right? They're speaking modern English.
Yeah. And it's not that it hasn't been translated. Like it's not that it's all being translated because we have Pidgin now, which the translator couldn't make sense of for them. So like that's a miss to me for as far as creating a futuristic world. The world building, leaves some to be desired. Maybe they'll wow me with some world building that's yet to come in future episodes, but as it stands right now, I'm a little bit underwhelmed.
Yeah.
But I'm just going through the timeline in the episode now, and it's literally up until they get that signal. It's a good 7.5 minutes of the episode.
Yeah. And it's not to say that, look, like I've been rewatching like TNG recently because I don't want to, like sometimes I have the propensity to think, wow, this, New Trek sucks and it wasn't as good as what came before it. But there's a lot of bad TNG episodes.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of bad TNG, right? A lot of it's terrible, but you make up for it by having, 5 or so really solid episodes a season and the rest of it's filler.
Yeah.
My problem with this is you're only making a short run every season that tells a serialized story, and all of it's lazy. And that's the problem is that, I understand that 60% of TNG episodes are absolute garbage. Everyone's watched A Fistful of Data. It's not, this is not great television, but they, what did you expect when everyone was making 25 episodes a season? But when you make a show like this where you're only making, 10 to 13 episodes every run, and you can't kind of piece together like a story that's interesting or compelling, like this is where it starts to fall down for me. Like they have these sort of like mini problems every episode, but it doesn't feel like a full episode, which when we will compare it to something like The Mandalorian, where you have episodic content that exists in a larger story arc, but that still feels like a complete end-to-end story every episode. It's it's doing what Discovery wants to do much better, right? And I'm not comparing it to that, but if you've watched the first episode of The Mandalorian, which I know both of you have, you have a really satisfying sci-fi arc that you could just replace Mando with Federation people that show up on a planet, and for some reason they can't bring the starship down, so they have to like work with the locals to figure out a creative solution, and they bring together two communities who don't understand each other, the Tusken Raiders and the settlers who live on Mos Pelgo or something like that. It is literally a Star Trek storyline. So that's my hot take right now, is that Star Wars is out-trekking Star Trek.
Yeah, nice hot take. All right. Yeah. One thing from the predictions that I forgot to mention is that seems like the Saru crowd won the who's going to be the captain prediction. It was sort of pretty clear in this episode that Michael Burnham sort of stepped aside and told Saru that, the chair was always meant for him. Congratulations to all those people. This is Captain Saru. That's pretty much a done deal at this point. unless anybody else has any more sort of macro thoughts on the episode, you want to go to timestamps and look at some clips that we want to bring up. How about Jesse? You want to start?
Sure, yeah, I can start. So number one, like a general note, with not timestamp, but you could put it at the beginning. I think it's at like the very beginning. But this is sort of a general thing, and it's the idea that dilithium went inert and it made the ships blow up, and it shows like a bunch of parked ships, which is funny because the clip they show is parked ships exploding, but they're very clear later that only ships that were in active warp blew up. But they show this like parked fleet that's just like kaboom. Yeah, everything. There it is right there. Watch, they're just sitting there.
Yeah,
boom. You just got burned, son.
Yeah.
But that's the weird thing. And this is, like, though it went inert, wouldn't that mean that there was just no reaction happening in the warp core? Like, if it had gone unstable, but I mean, like, from what I know of, say, something like plutonium, if plutonium's inert, it just doesn't cause a reaction. So you would think that, I don't want to nitpick, but it just seemed like one of these things where visually it was stupid because they made a point of it being, ships at warp, and I'm not sure it makes scientific sense either. Yeah. This obviously must be related to like the big bad of the season. Yeah. It's clear from the comments that get made later in the show that no one knows what happened. And I think there's sort of like two things that I think will happen. They'll do the Federation building stuff where they put the Federation back together, and then they'll figure out sort of what caused the burn. Yeah. No. And I think it's someone attacked them. Yeah. I think it was probably some intentional thing. What if they find out that it was like something that they did by going through time? Ooh. There's a prediction. Somehow the Discovery or her mother. I could see
her mom.
I could see Mama Burnham, because she said she went to Terralysium to talk to the people that lived there, and they had never met her. Yeah. And it was 900 years in the future. And she said she lived there.
Yeah, I do think when Michael is not very well explaining the burn for the third time now, when she was like, we don't know if it was an attack, I'm like, it does very much seem like an attack, but like you said, Jesse, I do think that this is building towards something, like that the big bad, or that somebody thought a really good way to destroy the Federation would be to blow up all of their ships, which, for being honest, is an extremely good way to destroy the Federation, is to blow up their entire fleet all at once, whether they're in warp transit or not, regardless of what Michael said earlier. Now we can throw that out and just say it has destroyed all Federation ships. So, I mean, that's a lot of ships.
The Ferengis did it. That's my call. It's always the Ferengis. It's a big statement about how capitalism, they just like they tanked the galactic economy just so that they could sort of snap up all the businesses. But I mean, there's no Ferengis. That would have been a great. But you think that this would be a great time for Ferengis, right? Like, there's a lot of like you probably need money again after the burn. There's all these things that are valuable. Like, you just think they would have swooped in to be like, we're good at business. That didn't happen.
Yeah. The fact that there's this black market, or everybody's rating everybody else for dilithium, is strange to me. Because, again, if it's dilithium that was in active warp cores that exploded, then dilithium mining deposits should have been unaffected. And if they were unaffected and all of these ships have disappeared, then there shouldn't be a sort of supply constraint in dilithium. It should be an oversupply. Dilithium should be flowing like, manna from heaven. Everybody should have some. It should be like in necklaces. It's confusing to me, unless it's just not economical to mine it anymore. But even that, everybody seems to be using it again, even though all of the ships exploded. Like, imagine if all gasoline exploded tomorrow. Who's going to gas up their car in a week and roll the dice?
It doesn't. It's one of those things that just doesn't, like, it doesn't wash for me, right? Like, say, like last week's episode with the Western thing. Like, you can buy that all that's happening, but it's like, why? Like, now that you've, like, you didn't have to volunteer to us that you could just say, look, all of it became unstable, and it just, and a lot of it blew up. they didn't need to volunteer to us that it was only ships that were in active warp. Because now what you've done is you've created a problem where, all of the, and after that, apparently now you can travel at warp again using dilithium, so it's fine to use it again. So it was like a momentary thing that only impacted people once. And then after the day, I guess everything just worked fine.
Yeah.
Yep. That appears to be the rules.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, I don't know. I'm still convinced that for Discovery, they just, they took a truck around to the back of like a writing school, like a creative arts school, and they found people who really needed jobs, and they were just like, "Hey, hop in, kids."
I mean, it's an unforced error to me. I don't think any of this was. You didn't need to come up with this detail. You could have just said, like, if dilithium explodes, or if people can't travel at warp because of MacGuffin reason, leave it at that. That creates an entirely new dynamic in the universe where you have to travel by either other means. Or you have to travel at impulse speed, and you can't go at warp, and that changes everything. And it's interesting. It just adding all this detail, and it's not well thought out, and it's confusing to people. It sort of complicates things unnecessarily.
Or something impacted like all of subspace, and now you can't enter into warp. You won't come out. You won't come out the other side, so nobody knows where all the ships that went into warp went. They just disappeared. And, make up something like that. And and Discovery is special now because it can use the spore drive to travel through the mycelium network, so it doesn't have to worry about subspace or what. You just make crap up, but at least the crap that you make up doesn't create sort of like these errors in the continuity of what exists and what doesn't.
Like I still am clinging to optimism because there were already levers for this type of plot change that existed in canon. There's the directive to destroy omega particles if you ever find them, because there was the accident where, an entire sector became unnavigable by warp speed because a omega particle accident destroyed subspace in that sector, and so you can't travel through it at warp, blah, blah, blah. But presumably you can still travel as long as you have the dilithium. It just seems that there's not that much to go around. Jesse, why don't we go to your next point?
You know what? I think we already kind of talked about the Earth hoarding resources. That was my second large point. So I'm just going to say I don't know why, I can't stop hating Tilly. There was a part where she almost like accuses Michael Burnham. It's at 12:25. And she's like, you let us go? And I was just like, man, Tilly, what's your problem? But then she like laughs it off and hugs her. And then she says, I like your hair, to Michael Burnham. And I think that's racist. So can we just agree that Tilly's racist? And all Michael Burnham is to her is interesting hair.
Yeah.
And let's just agree that off camera, she asked her to touch it.
Yeah.
They didn't show that part, but afterwards, so... What if her first name is Karen? Karen Tilly.
Karen Tilly.
Yeah. I mean, I can very much jump on the Tilly hate train, but I'm really, really trying to like her. And I don't, but I am trying. And that scene was very strange. Like, I guess, do you have that friend that's like messages you after a couple of months and is like, You forgot about me, didn't you? Like, it's just a weird thing to bring up. Like, it's I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, and I kind of felt like Michael Burnham, but then like Tilly laughs it off. So I was like, was it like some kind of weird passive aggressive exchange?
It was,
and it was a really weird moment, and it just made me dislike Tilly even more. And I kind of thought like Michael Burnham should have been like, bitch, I saved you. Right? Like, I just pulled you out of the parasitic ice was about to eat the ship with you on it, and I saved you. What do you mean I forgot about you?
Look at this facial expression here. Isn't this a facial expression that's just like, you just asked me to touch my hair, and I'm just like, no.
I like Michael Burnham. I really do. I think Sonequa Martin Green does a great job. Yeah, I would love to see her hit Tilly.
Oh my god.
I don't think. Did we get a Bizarro? No. Like, we had those opportunities already. Yeah, but I Bizarro, guess there's some missed opportunities. Awesome. Yeah, Bizarro Michael Burnham would have been amazing.
I know. I want real Michael Burnham to do it.
It's gonna happen.
I don't want it to be some Bizarro thing. I want her to just like Tilly says something passive aggressive like that again, and she like really hits her hard just once.
Yep.
And then as Tilly's like on the ground crying, she's like, "You're an ensign, and you will respect my authority."
Right.
So here's the thing that's weird about the whole, what is it? You abandoned us or whatever. Like, and she's, struggling to fit back into Starfleet because she's been away working as a courier for an entire year. It's been a year.
A whole year.
It's been a year. That's not that long. You know
how I know that's BS? Because I went to work last week for the first time in like 8 months. So like almost a year, right? So I went to Bert and I work at the same office. I went into the office. I put my suit on. You know what didn't feel weird? Putting the suit on. Shaving my face, right? Going and sitting in my office and doing work. It was eerily normal to just put my lawyer uniform on and go into the office. So I know that she's full of crap.
Yeah.
Right. Because 30 years of being a Starfleet officer and 1 year of being a courier, obviously the normal thing is being the 30 years of being in Starfleet. Yeah. It was a strange scene. I agree. It was if we're being honest, another unforced error is that scene. I don't know why they're driving a wedge between the people that everyone already hates Tilly. I don't know why they're just pouring gasoline on the everyone hates Tilly.
Maybe they're gonna kill her this season and they're trying to just make it a little easier for people who did like her.
I don't think any of us predicted that, but I mean, I think many people in the comments will say that they would very much like Tilly to be the person that dies.
Again, this is why it's not Michael Burnham as a character's fault. It's the idiotic writers who put dialogue in her mouth that she says that she makes it sound like a year has been so hard and now she doesn't even remember what it's like to be a Starfleet officer.
Right.
That's the stupid writers who wrote stupid lines for an otherwise great character.
Yep.
And I just, this, again, probably kids who haven't had a job for very long.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a year. Now, she was a mutineer and she was put in prison. Presumably she was in prison for some extended amount of time before she was, paroled to be on the Discovery.
I think it was actually a year, wasn't it? I think she was actually in the prison, the Starfleet prison, for a year. I think they do the Battle of the Binary Stars in the first 2 episodes. It's cut to 12 months later and she's on the prison shuttle.
So, I mean, she seemed to fit back in just fine after a year in prison for mutiny. Now she's basically been, on a ship in the future, hanging out with her boyfriend, not boyfriend, friend, whatever. Not boyfriend, definitely not, for a year. And she doesn't fit back into Starfleet anymore. You would think a year in prison for, doing what you think was the right thing, and then Starfleet putting you in jail for it would cause you to have a harder time fitting back in.
Yeah.
Also, this is the same series that has Ash Tyler, right? So even though you find out later that he's actually Voq pretending to be Ash Tyler, but you don't know this. They don't have any protocol for people who have been away from serve or duty, because he's found after having been tortured to their knowledge on a Klingon ship. They rescue him, or he rescues himself with Lorca, gets back onto Discovery, and is immediately put back to work as senior staff.
Right, yeah.
He's on the bridge. There's no counseling sessions for him. There's no, take some time away.
He didn't need it.
He didn't need it. All of a sudden, and this is the Michael Burnham who, single-handedly wins wars, right?
Yep.
She's
more than one.
Been on vacation for a year, and she's unable to fit back into Starfleet all of a sudden. It's just a little bit over the top.
I think they're trying to telegraph how difficult the year has been, and I think they're very much failing. And this is sort of one of the notes that I was going to talk about. It's just the constant references. Do you remember this planet at this time? the constant inside jokes were really grating to me. Like, I get that it was a year, but I think why not just make it 10 years then? Like, if they want...
Make it 5 years, 10 years.
Make it 5. Make it 5.
Sense. Yeah, make it 5. And then in 5 years, she's seen some ish in 5 years. As we talked about, in the first episode, she kills like 35 people, so that was a little bit weird. But I mean, like, yes, she's done some things that she regrets, and she's a space pirate for a few years, but this and the inside jokes, they really grate on me because, like Jesse, I love her character, and I really, really, really just want her to see her do Starfleet stuff. I want to see her be the person that she is, because she's a great character. She really is.
And the writing for her was better in the first season. I mean, the first season writing for Michael Burnham, dialogue choices and everything I thought it was more on point for what they're trying to achieve with the character, how the character seemed. And I just think that now I don't know why they're making such poor dialogue choices. And it sounds like stuff that I'd try to write, I guess. And I'm not, because I'm not a writer, right? So I would write lines like this for her. I'd be the one writing these, I'd be like, yeah, everything blew up, the dilithium, but it was inert, and derp, derp, derp. So those are my points anyway.
Alex, you want to go next?
Sure. I could just talk about the how many died sequence, like the tier. I mean, it was a lot. I guess the thing that I want to talk about is, I mean, the destruction of pretty much every spacefaring vehicle would be a lot of people. So when she's like millions, I'm like if the entire fleet blew up, it's not just millions of people. Like it's got to be billions of people, right? Like, I feel like this is a problem that science fiction frequently has, when you don't have writers that sit down and just be like, you know what, just go a little bit over, because it's science fiction. I was expecting, honestly, trillions. Like, I was expecting her to say like where it doesn't matter. And then wiping away the tier was a little bit much, but I mean, it was Star Trek.
Let's see if we can go to the clip here.
That's impossible. Nothing could affect all dilithium all at once.
Says a man who jumps a starship through mushroom space.
How many? How many died?
Millions.
Okay, so millions. I mean,
yeah,
you would think that having just gone through the Klingon War, they would be like, oh, it's not that bad. Millions, better than I thought.
Yeah, millions is really not that bad.
I feel like, again, this is in the writer's room. It was like that scene remember the first Austin Powers, when like Dr. Evil makes the miscalculation about how much is a lot of money in the future. Yeah. I picture the writer like 100,000 people died, and one of the other writers is like a million? And the other writer's like, a million. That sounds right.
On top of that,
whole galaxy, a million people.
Can I just say, okay, millions of people, and they're like really broken up about that. Two things. We, on this planet alone, not having spacefaring, multi-planetary, multi-system civilizations, frequently have wars where tens of millions of people die.
Yeah,
right?
We do.
Or we have a pandemic that does 1 million in 8 months.
Yeah.
Millions of people have died this year, for sure.
Point number 2. She's talking to the senior staff of the Discovery, which just traveled through time because they wanted to make sure that everybody didn't die.
Literally.
It was a very real possibility that they would get to the future and literally every living thing would be dead. I think that these people would be like, millions dead? So trillions are alive? We're doing pretty well. Good job, everybody.
Like, this is success.
Better than what almost happened. Universe.
I mean, millions was like a great number. I'm surprised they didn't clap like I was talking about last week when they're clapping, because they're so happy about this maneuver. Like, millions, like, that's great. What great news. Yeah, it was a strange scene.
Millions.
Or like the anti-maskers that we have in COVID. Some of them could have even been like, how many people would have died anyway during that time because of starship disasters?
How many people would naturally die?
Probably millions.
Probably.
Yeah, I bet you they're exaggerating what the burn really is.
Do you think there are like burn conspiracy theorists who are like,
Oh, I'm
burn
sure
never
there
happened,
is.
man.
There's gotta be.
Yeah, the burn never happened.
Burn's
It's
a lie.
Federation.
Don't wake up, sheeple.
Conspiracy.
There was no burn.
Yeah.
They just want your dilithium.
Federation.
Future Alex Jones.
It's cute.
Or it's just regular Alex Jones. He's immortal.
Yeah, it's just regular.
Although, like, you could have a really good conspiracy because you could say there's a continuum of omnipotent beings that are controlling the universe, man. And they made it. They made the burn.
They made the burn on like a bet, like it was like a D&D, like somebody rolled the die. Oh, you rolled 2 6s. You know what that means? We blow up the Federation.
Yeah. Or like that wild magic table.
Yeah,
the burn.
exactly.
Inert dilithium. That's his colloidal silver. You're gonna try my inert dilithium. It's great. Put it in some water. Wear a bracelet.
Alex, you had another general point.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about it a lot already. Like, I did like the Star Trek part of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
I really did like the TNG. We're going to get these two together, and instead of blowing them up, we're going to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think if anything TNG has taught us, or was trying to tell us about sort of the futurism and all these things, is that if we separate all of our problems, we sit down and talk, we have more in common than we have difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I think it was a little silly that they were all shouting at each other on the bridge, and like it wasn't like a, like at least like sit down,
Go
like
to the ready
sit
room.
down in a ready room
Yeah.
or something. Yeah, exactly. Like, and have a chat. Like the yelling on the bridge was a bit strange, and it also felt like maybe it was a bit fast that they came to a realization that they shouldn't be fighting, given that a lot of people have died on both sides. But I mean, I did feel like it was very much a TNG style thing, and I really liked it.
Yeah, me too. I think
Cool.
they sort of fast forwarded through the revelation moment by having Philippa just kick him in the leg and rip his helmet off. They're like, we don't have the budget this episode for the rest of this exposition. Just kick him in the leg and take the helmet off. Done.
That was one scene that didn't have enough emotion.
Yeah.
It should have been like,
Yeah.
right? He's a human. And then Michael Burnham would be like,
Or what if he couldn't breathe the air on the ship? Like, what if
I
She
agree
didn't-
with you.
well, I mean, Philippa wouldn't care, right? Georgia wouldn't,
No,
Yeah.
Georgia
wouldn't
wouldn't
bother
care.
her if he couldn't breathe. That's his problem.
I think she would find it funny if he couldn't breathe, if we're being honest.
Maybe
And a
she
little
thought she
bit
was
turned
ripping
on.
off an alien's head.
Yeah.
And she just thought she was just killing the guy. And she's like, oh, it's a human.
If she thought that
I'm
was
so
the
sorry,
better
sir.
solution. She's like, oh, it's a human? I would just try to kill him.
Yeah, I thought you were a filthy alien. What, she has is that an admiral's? Isn't that the admiral badge?
Yeah, she gave herself an admiral badge.
Okay, maybe I didn't notice that. Did she reference that part?
She
or?
did, yeah.
Okay,
When they were
I
talking
didn't-
about the inspection, they're like, she's just like, I gave myself an admiral badge because that's the only thing that would at all be realistic.
Ridiculous. But yeah, like mine are both really general points. And one of them we talked about a little bit. It's that from 0 to 6 minutes in this episode, and then for the last 7.5 minutes, it's really just the crew catching up with one another. And to me, by the time they reach the Tilly scene with Michael, and then after it's the Michael scene with Book when he's leaving, getting on his ship, or he's supposed to be, I was bored. I was like, there's too much of this all together. Either spread it over a couple episodes, or spread it throughout the episode itself. Sprinkle it throughout the episode. Just don't bombard me with this for 6 minutes straight and then 7.5 minutes straight. It was just boring.
Yeah, it was boring.
I felt like by the end, I wanted to just sort of fast forward through the episode, and I kind of don't like feeling that because I really want to love the show, but like it was boring. Like they showed futuristic Earth and I got to see none of it.
Sorry, just on the future Earth. This is one thing about Discovery that always perplexes me. I don't get what these little moments where they're like, okay, then we're going to have this scene where they go and they're all like, this is the tree I used to study under. Why do we need that scene? What's important about it, right? We're back on Earth, but it's 900 years in the future. Yeah, we know that. I don't get the tree scene. I don't understand who is this appealing to?
Yeah.
What demographic wants to be like, and then they sat under a tree and it just made my day. And I told my cat about it, and my cat cried and I cried and we both cried. And then the dog came in and the dog cried, and then we had tea. And I like, what kind of person needs this scene?
Yeah. I mean, I would have loved, if they wanted to spend this much time on it, then give me some context for the world that we're in at the same time. Not just that, there was a tree that was a little tree and now it's a giant tree. Go to what was previously the academy and show me like them looking at yearbooks or something. They see, their nephew who was just born, went to Starfleet and became a captain. They're so proud. Something that puts them in.
Or it's a Kmart.
Yeah.
And they're really
gone.
upset because they're like, what has happened to this once great institution? It's a space Kmart now. Nobody cares about your stupid Federation.
Yeah.
And then they cry in front of the Kmart.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Something. There were a couple other things that were a little bit, odd to me. Another one of those, why are they so upset? Like the Earth Defense Force sees the Discovery approaching Earth's orbit and puts up their shields, boards them, is gonna, bombard them. Now, it's 900 years in the future, guys. If the U.S. Navy saw a ship, a naval vessel from 900 years ago, I don't think they would. They wouldn't be like, all right, guys, let's arm the nuclear missiles, like DEFCON 5. Like we are, like they would.
I know.
They'd be curious. Like, what is that old thing then? Why did you restore that? Are you like some sort of history buff? Like, where did you get this thing? I don't think they would scramble jets for that.
Like, can't they scan it? Like, remember in every other Star Trek show ever, they'd be like, Captain, we scanned the enemy vessel and it's got nothing that could hurt us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's sort of implied. Also with Saru's like terrible gambit, we are the descendants of the people from. It's like, and they scanned it and they're like, this ship doesn't seem old. Like it seems very much like you time traveled. Like like the Bandit figured it out in 12 seconds, and the Earth Defense Force. So why even try the gambit? It was strange. But
plus, there's like a million times when they scan ships and every other Star Trek show, and they're like, it looks like it's 400 years old, right? Like they can carbon date things with their scanners. I mean, I don't know. It just seemed like, how did you not know?
Yeah. It was a very strange.
Yeah, it was a weird
situation.
choice. I mean, it's great that you're going to the future where you can sort of write new stories, but it should still be Star Trek. You don't have to use all of the species that we're used to and in the same ways that we're used to. You can explore new territory, but I mean, it still has Star Trek before the colon, so let's not throw away all of the other things that have been in every other franchise or Star Trek franchise. It's just really sort of odd, the choices that they're making. The Trill, that's the other thing that I wanted to talk about. Is this not the same ship that had an imposter captain for an entire season? And, they were betrayed by him and went to the Bizarro universe and found he is actually from there and he's murdering people. Also, the ship that had Ash Tyler on it, who was an imposter member of senior staff who murdered their doctor in cold blood. This Trill teenage genius beams aboard your ship supposedly as part of the Earth Defense Force, who's supposed to scan your capabilities, and sabotages your ship. She sabotaged the ship. And their response is, hey, you want to come with us? That's the conclusion. They can't possibly be this gullible still. Like, they would be the most cautious, paranoid ship you've ever encountered. Like, Philippa would probably try to murder this girl in her sleep. And if she doesn't, I'm going to be very disappointed. And he's like, we can't trust her. She sabotaged our ship. We should have put her to death. That should be the penalty for this. And they're like, no, she's very smart. Like, everybody's smart. We should kill her. Because it makes no sense to make her a part of your staff and take her with you because she says that she has the Trill Symbiote of a general who was part of Starfleet. Like, be that as it may, you sabotaged our ship. like, not only can we not trust you, but the Earth Defense Force can't trust you either. So who knows what they're going to do to you. It's just a very wishy-washy sort of, we don't really care about what we've written previously. We want this person to be on the ship, so just let's make up some nonsense reason for her to be there, or them to be there.
We want a future person on the boat.
Yeah.
So she's there now.
Yeah.
They didn't even check to see if she really had a symbiote. 'Cause it feels to me like she's human, but she's got the symbiote. I don't know if that's even possible. Like she doesn't have. She's not ethnically Trill.
Yeah. She
right?
doesn't have.
She doesn't have the.
She's not Trill. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
she's just a human with a. Is that even something they can do? Did that happen in DS9? Can you put a symbiote in a human?
They talked about how it would be like extremely difficult, but theoretically possible. And I think
they
that's
didn't even
the
check to see if she had it. Now anyone can get on that starship. They're like, trust me, I have a star.
you have a Trill
I have a
inside you.
symbiote inside me, and it used to be a Starfleet officer, so practically one.
Also,
Yeah.
Dax was part of Starfleet, so Starfleet
Very much
understands how Trill work. Why they would have said, "Oh, yeah, there was a Starfleet admiral or whatever on Earth, but he died a couple years ago," and they wouldn't know. Well, actually, he's a Trill, so the host died, or the Trill part died, but the symbiont, it's fine, and it's in this 16-year-old who's actually on your ship right now, sabotaging things. When Dax was dying and they needed a new Dax, people knew about it. They wouldn't just be like, well, I guess Dax died, and let's never think about that again. It just didn't.
So the
didn't bother.
The implication is the Admiral was a Trill with his first his first lifetime.
Yeah.
Okay, because I wasn't super clear on that one either. So he's okay. Yeah, well, that makes some sense. But I agree with you. It's one of those things that we've talked about it a bit. It's like it's 1,000 years in the future. Like the world is different. We're starting from scratch. So okay, let's throw out. Everyone knows about Trills and everyone knows about dilithium. Like all those rules are gone now. Like we're in the future. So, but I agree with you. I think it's generous to suggest that we're starting from scratch. It's we need more world building, and we need to figure out why more of this stuff is lost, and why the world is really a lot less different than 1,000 years with no warp travel would be.
Well, yeah, that's the last sort of thing was that it doesn't seem that futuristic. It doesn't even seem the future 900 years after Discovery doesn't seem that much different than Discovery to now. Like it seems like there were far greater changes between now and when Discovery takes place than between Discovery and nearly 1,000 years after Discovery when it starts.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit sad. I want to see things that I'd never conceived of before, not just slightly different looking starships.
And advanced phasers, don't forget about those.
Advanced phasers.
They were advanced, and you can transport through shields now. So
transporting it through shields. That's what we got.
That's like one of the only rules Star Trek, and so quantum transporting or something.
Just put quantum before, it'll be fine.
But it's also a throwaway line, just on what you said, like the throwaway line that Burnham also said, which was and we tried every kind of technology, or the Federation tried every kind of technology, and none of them worked. And I'm like, really? And you guys accidentally created a much more powerful system?
Yeah.
If we're being honest, they failed into the spore system multiple times. And I agree that it's a miracle that it works, and it can only work because of the clever engineering of the one but the idea that the entire remaining Federation came up with no alternatives is a little strange.
So
Plus, don't they have all wouldn't they have at least had all
of the research? Yeah.
And wouldn't at some point Starfleet have been we had a working spore drive and we have all the specs for it. Just do it again.
Just make it.
Right.
Yeah. They can think about it's banned technology. We can't use it. You know how many times they banned genetic manipulation. They keep banning androids, and Starfleet's always making those in secret somewhere. But I have predictions for what the rest of the season is going to be, at least for a while. I think that it is going to be a bit sort of episodic, and it's going to be the Discovery being the only ship that can travel really far distances, traveling from place to place in search of Starfleet, solving the problems of the locals on the way, doing the sort of diplomacy thing. And they're going to have inferior technology for the whole time, because the lesson is going to be that what Starfleet it really is a set of ideals and core beliefs. And it's not about having superior technology. It's about having superior, I don't know, morals or something like
Right.
that. And then that's
doing the right way.
yeah, that's going to be the lesson at the end of it. That's my prediction. And
That is
I mean, if they do it well, that could be a really great story. It's a
Yeah.
sort of, you know, David Carradine kung fu wandering from town to town, you know, giving people wisdom and beating up bad guys with his bare hands. Okay.
Choking
Absolutely.
yourself in a closet.
I
Wasn't gonna
really
go
like
there.
that prediction because that's like it's exactly what I'm hoping. I'm hoping for a monster of the week, problem of the week, switch quickly. I'm hoping that they get to starting to do where the whole part of the episode, the main thrust of the episode, is Star Trek, like is science fiction. Like I'm hoping that, and not Tilly's feelings. Like I want it to be the thrust to be futurology and interesting discussions about what the future looks like, and now the even farther future.
Yeah.
Well, if you want great episodic content, just turn on Disney Plus to get the Mandalorian. if you want a monster of the week and you want, you know, tight storytelling and a dialogue that makes sense, you know where to find it.
Okay. And just for the record, I forgot to mention this at the top. The episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes himself, if you didn't notice. I mean, I really feel like he directed the middle of the episode because it really seemed like an episode he was on, you know, 25, 30 years ago.
I could have used at least one person stepping over a chair to sit on it then. I mean, like, if he's in the director's seat, you just think he'd be like, you know what, can we do that sit down again? How about you try stepping over the chair? You put a leg right over top of it, and then you sit.
Yeah. I mean, what I would have liked is if Philippa's in the bridge and she puts her leg up on the console so that her crotch is directly in the helmsman's face, and just to dominate him a little bit more.
Yeah,
That's on point for her character.
absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll wrap it there. We'll see you next time.